Okay, so in my various feeds, and because I didn't have a video prepped for today and ready to go, this post came across a couple of Discords I'm on, because sometimes people will repost the same thing across multiple different Discords, especially when they're on them and they have to do with the same field of work or study or topic. And I mean, I do the same thing, but it's usually for stream stuff. But anyway, so basically this dude had noticed a bunch of crawlers and bots that he sees, and a lot of them are spoofed as meta crawlers via user agent strings and so on and so forth. You can kind of do the same thing in any old web browser to identify your browser as being on something else. So for example, Fire Dragon identifies as I believe Firefox on Windows 10 or 11, take your pick. But anyway, so you'll notice that on the bbc.co.uk site, once you filter out the bots based on go through certain verifications on user agent strings and what all to verify the bots, the traffic drops significantly here. And it's the same thing across here as well. So as you filter that out, you could reject all that traffic and you would suffer from a lot less issues with network traffic to your server. So, yeah, definitely highlights how spammy the web is. Wild West++. Let's see, DocuSor. Let's see. So it basically checks against the Meta's ASN. And then it basically culls those bots based on whether they are actually the proper ASN or not. And there's a documented method of doing it from Meta themselves that is linked. Where is it? Right in here, or no, here. So you can build your own Meta web crawlers, or identify them rather. And so yeah. Yep, followed for them, and so on and so forth. So once you start culling out a lot of the spammy ones that are just going after stuff to get content off of web pages and are crawling around the internet for that, then you reduce a lot of traffic. Because there are a lot of bots now on the web. Whether it be Reddit, as I mentioned previously, or just on the web in general, looking at content from news sites, aggregators, and so on and so forth, there are bots, crawlers everywhere, crawling for stuff. And sometimes I'm one of those people that's crawling around the web looking for stuff. But that's usually, not all the time, but it happens all the time. So a couple people link to a series of articles from Jen Wildboar's blog, apparently. So, yeah. Let's see. Yeah, it looks pretty short. We could do this. So, it's one of those days again where botnets are hammering my little email server with brute force attacks to send spam. This comes in waves, but it's persistent and part of the sysadmin life. So, this is where spam assassin comes in, and it's really weird when you're having legitimate emails that kind of score such that they are flagged as spam because of the way that the person creating the email writes it. And it gets very, very interesting when you're trying to get when church emails are coming in and it's getting caught by your spam filter. And it's you can track it down to one specific person. And I've looked at who typically gets yeah, there's one person in particular, and I don't know why that it happens to be, but those emails are crafted in such a way that it just spam assassin. Its settings is default by MailWiz Luke's MailWiz, probably default spam assassin settings anyway. Just flags it and filters it out. But anyway. So, those stealthy botnets, how I found out about a not-so-new class of botnets, and this web is broken. Certain companies recruit app developers to create bot And that's by injecting network sharing SDKs into their apps. These botnets can use the network bandwidth, users of said apps to crawl the web, brute force mail servers, and other nasty things. So these are the list of IP addresses. I've recently learned that there's a shady market out there where app developers are offered to include a little peer-to-peer proxy library in their app, so the users of said app donate 120 to 150 kilobits per second of their network traffic to that company. The app developer gets paid for including the library. One offer is 18 cents per active user. These shady companies claim that Apple and Google app stores are fine with their libraries. This is one sneaky way of how botnets are created out there. There are many others, unfortunately. So this is basically like they're stealing your bandwidth is what they're doing. And they are very shameless about it. So, but it's just such a minute amount. Why does it matter? All those numbers add up real quick. And even still, that's like per second. So how much data are they pulling per minute, per hour, per day, per month from your network that you're paying for? And if you're using a mobile data connection with these apps, then they're actually helping you get charged more money depending on your data plan. And in some ways, they may be affecting your speeds, but anyway, your effective download speeds and your web traffic, because maybe they prioritize their web traffic over the stuff that you're doing. Hi, seems we haven't heard back from you after the first contact. First emails below about your Mozilla extension monetization. May I know if you are considering monetization with our optimized SDK solution? The monetization is by sharing some part of the user's bandwidth. There are so many extensions who successfully run this monetization method already. If you're not interested, please kindly click So they send you emails to share your bandwidth, and this is how these botnets operate. So they probably route through your phones. They probably route the crawlers through the phone networks, and then back to them is what they're doing. These shady companies then sell access to these IMHO-infected apps to execute commands that can be exactly the SASL SMTP attacks my mail server is seeing. The shady companies, of course, say that they only do legitimate stuff, but that ultimately they cannot control all traffic caused by their customers. So they're a middleman of selling traffic, and you can even see they have the dollar sign on they have their currency improperly formatted. So, like, why? Anyway, these botnets are quite smart as they have tens of thousands of typically residual or mobile IP addresses at their disposal. They use each one of them for exactly one single try per day to log into my mail server or to try an SMTP connection. That way they stay under the radar of most simple solutions like fail to ban that count attempts per IP to make a block decision. But as these botnets distribute their attempts across all of these IP addresses, they can do a quite sustainable distributed brute force password guessing attack quite effectively. Most sysadmins see these attempts as noise anyway. I do not. So I simply block all of them on first sight. For a long time, I've collected some 50,000 IP addresses this way that are currently blocked by my firewall. 98% are IPv4. By the way, IPv6 is still a rare sight. The IP addresses come from all over the world. Some people suggested might be able to identify ASNs that are abused more frequently this way and block the whole thing instead of single IPs. So I took a look at that possibility. TLDR, no. I took the IP addresses trying to do a brute force SASL login during the past 7 days and matched them to their respective ASN. It's quite a broad distribution with on average less than 4 IP addresses per ASN. On average, less than 4 IPs per ASN, so blocking ASNs wouldn't help that much, so I keep my simple solution running. A cron job on my mail server checks the log files for these attackers using a shell script and sends me an email every morning with copy-paste commands to add these pesky critters to the firewall. I prefer to do it this way. I could automate that part, obviously, but I like to know what's going on with my little server. And just by looking at the length of the emails, I know when a new wave has started. I made the raw data available in the spreadsheet, in case you want to play with it. You can export CSV from there. I replaced the last octet of the IP address with NNN to anonymize the attackers a bit. So obviously still like keeping some things like on the down low, and everybody may have different attackers, But the fact that these botnets are out there and that these companies are out there selling the bandwidth to companies that are likely doing illicit things with it, it's like I railed on before about the middleman and field IT work. They are there and they really don't control too much of what goes on. So I know for a company like this, it can be challenging to do something like that, but the fact that you are putting a backdoor to forcefully share without a user's consent their bandwidth and not making that clear is absolutely absurd. The fact you would put this in as a vector that could compromise an end user's device is bad, honestly. And for what? For money that is going to be used for botnets, likely. And for scraping and every other thing. But that's neither here nor there. So, oh, you see there's some OVH in here. Interesting. But anyway. Yeah. So the web is broken. I guess you have all heard about the growing problem of AI companies trying to aggressively collect whatever data they can get their hands on to train their models. This has caused an explosive surge in web crawlers relentlessly, hitting servers big and small, but who runs these crawlers? Turns out it could be you. Let's see. The web is broken. Stealthy botnets linked below. So there is, and in my honest opinion, shady market out there that gives app developers on iOS, Android, macOS, and Windows money for including library into their apps that sells users bandwidth. Infactica is just one example. There are many more. I am 99% sure that these companies cause what effectively are DDoS attacks by aggressive AI crawlers that many webmasters have to deal with since months. This business model should simply not exist. Apple, Microsoft, and Google should act. Now, they have the power to. And they should have the ability on their respective app stores to actually block these apps, but apparently they don't. We connect your users' IP addresses to the Infactica peer-to-business network, which allows companies to access web data to build price aggregation platforms, perform search engine optimization. So they're using whatever stupid app you're running that siphons a little bit of your bandwidth as a distributed network without your consent is what's going on. Just because a company wants to make a little extra cash, okay? Create brand protection and marketing strategies, conduct academic research, produce uptime and performance services, ensure corporate data protection, and more. What these companies then sell to their customers is network access through the devices, PCs that have an app with this SDK installed. They are proud to tell you how you can funnel your AI web scraping, etc. through millions of rotating residential and mobile IP addresses, exactly the pattern we see hitting our servers. Let's see, they offer set pricing, 1,000 ports. So they can hand over all these IP addresses to people that want them, and then just hands off and let it go. This is basically backdoor malware. Now again, this company is just one of many selling similar services, and they all promise that they carefully check what commands their customers send to the, in my honest opinion, infected apps on your phone and PC. Yeah, I'm sure they do no evil, and when they do, they can claim it's not their problem because they are merely the proxy. Again, a shady business model. Trend Micro did some research on these companies back in 2023, and it confirms my suspicion. And I guess with AI scraping, this kind of business is booming. They're malicious actors who repacked freeware and shareware written by other people to conduct drive-by downloads of the Infactica peer-to-business service. So how many free-to-play apps run this service that they're able to give out free stuff to people? But anyway. So brute forcing of Simperium, brute forcing of Bitwarden, scraping of house prices, scraping of Lazada and Walmart prices, creating accounts of live.com, Instagram, and mail.ru. But this also explains the explosion of bot traffic that really cripples a lot of smaller services, like my Forgajo instance that I had to make non-public. So if you, as an app developer, include such a third-party SDK in your app to make some money, you're part of the problem, and I think you should be held responsible for delivering malware to your users, making them botnet members. Unfortunately, it is next to impossible for normal users to detect the inclusion of such shady SDKs in the network traffic they cause, not even mentioning how hard this is for the admins of small web servers. I already blogged about this back in February, but I think it is better to put what I have learned since then in this new post. I guess it won't be my last on this topic. If you want to feel real dirty, go to proxyway.com for a collection of reviews on these services. It's a huge market, and I am 100% convinced that AI web scraping is currently the biggest growth driver of these companies. And when I see that some of them rely on injecting SDKs into third-party apps to extend their reach and fill their pools of residential proxies, I would call out these companies for distributing malware and creating botnets, but that's just my personal opinion. I'm sure they're all legit. Yeah, that's not cool. I am now of the opinion that every form of web scraping should be considered abusive behavior, and web servers should block all of them. If you think your web scraping is acceptable behavior, you can thank these shady companies and the AI hype for moving you to the bad corner. Thank you for your time and interest. I hope it helps you understand why web crawlers have become a real problem and how this is more and more an attack on the foundation of the web as it was intended to be. This residential proxy business is just one part of this, and we webmasters admins can only try to block it. It is getting more and more difficult to keep up with these waves. Thanks AI, I guess. So again, this is mostly down to certain other factors, but I'm sure there's a way to filter out the botnets that are created through these third-party apps. But the fact that this is an option, yeah, it's sad. And again, this is, web traffic being siphoned off of users without their consent. Or if it is by their consent, it's by unknowing consent, because the terms of service are so vague or unread or convoluted and long that you would never be able to tell at this point just by reading through the terms of service. And it's really a sad bunch of huff that we live in a world like this. If you liked the content, if you enjoyed it, if you think I deserve it, like, comment, subscribe, leave any criticisms you have or what have you. I appreciate it. Feed that algorithm, like I said, and I will see you guys in the next one.